Okay, we want to go over solutions to assignment 16. Assignment 16 is where you had to read in a list of teams from a file, sports.txt, into an array, make a method to turn all of those to capital letters, a find first method that found the first string in that list in alphabetical order, and an index of last method so that you get the index of the last one in alphabetical order. So we start off, this code right here was given to you. So we create a new easy reader object which allows us to read in from the file. And then as long as we haven't reached the end of the file, we keep reading in, and every line that's not null, we add 1 to our count. So we figure out how many strings there are, how many sports are in that list. Then, for number 1, we create a new array that's count items long. We reinitialize input so that it's pointing at the beginning of the file again. We reinitialize count to be 0, and basically we repeat the loop above here, except that now we say sports bracket count equals temp. So we read each line in and add it to the array, and then count plus plus increases the index counter by 1. And then this loop right here runs through and prints all of the elements of that out to verify that we've made it work. Now, let's run it. There are 15 sports and we printed them all out. So now the turn to all caps method. So we have we pass the array in, and we create a new array that's the same length, called sports. And what we're going to do for each one of those is sports bracket I is going to equal teams bracket I, so the array passed. But we're going to call toUpperCase, which is a method from the string class that turns a string into an all uppercase string. And then we return that new array. So we just created an array that's a copy of teams, but with all the elements turned to uppercase. And then what we're going to do is we're going to say sports equals turn to all caps of sports. So we're going to pass the array and then reset it, pointing at the new array instead of the old array. So that old array is going to go away. The array with the lowercase letters is going to be dereferenced and garbage collected. And then we will put this in. So this would be to making sure the turn to all caps method works. So let's run this. And now, see, we've printed out capital letters. So all the sports in the same order, but now in all capital letters. Now, find first. So what we're going to do here is, because we know that teams won't be empty, we're not going to worry about dealing with what happens if it's empty. So we're going to say string first equals teams 0. So we're going to assume that the thing that comes first in alphabetical order is the first element of our array to start. Then we're going to look through all the other elements, starting at element 1. And every time we find something that comes before first, that's going to be the new first. The way we do that is with the compare to method. So if teams bracket I dot compare to first. Right? The compare to method is going to compare two strings, teams bracket I and first. And if teams bracket I comes before first, meaning it's smaller, you get a negative number. If teams bracket I dot compare to first is positive, it means teams bracket I comes after. And if teams bracket I dot compare to first is 0, it means that they're the same string. They're the same value. So we want to check and see, does it come first? So is it less than 0? And if it is, first equals teams bracket I, because we found a new first element. And then we're going to return first. So if this works up here, we're going to do find first. We're going to say string first equals, is it find first? Yeah. Find first of sports. So we'll print out first equals and then whatever that first sport is. So if we run this, first equals baseball. And it turns out baseball is actually the first sport as it in alphabetical order. Now, for this next one, for index of last, it'd be useful if we had index numbers with the sports when we print them out. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to rewrite this method when we print them out so that we get 0, 1, 2. So we know the indices of each one of the sports. So now we want to do the index of last method. An index of last is going to be very much like find first. In fact, so much like it that I'm going to copy and paste, except that this is going to be int last equals 0 because we're going to return last because we are using this as an index, and then we're going to compare teams I and teams last, but this time we want to get the last one, so we want to see if teams I comes after teams last. That means it comes later, so that should be our new last, and the index then should change to I. So this method, again, it's basically the same as find first, except that now we're looking for the last thing, so we go through it and look and find every time we find something that's comes after last, that's the new last, but we're keeping track of the index rather than the actual value. And if we come back up here, we're going to do index of last, and we're going to say last index equals index of last for sports, and then we'll print it out. Now if we look through here, wrestling is the last thing in alphabetical order, so we should get 9 for our last index. So let's run this. Last index equals 9. So this is our solution, where first we read it into an array and print it out. Then we call the turn to all caps method, the find first method, and the index of last method. There's the turn to all caps method. There's the find first method. And there's the index of last method.